You know, the box of dried pasta sitting in your pantry right now isn't just like a cheap Tuesday night dinner.
Right, definitely not.
I mean, 300 years ago, it was actually this highly engineered edible life insurance policy. It literally kept entire cities from starving to death.
It really was. And, we completely take that level of survival engineering for granted today. We just boil water, throw it in, and don't think twice.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fantastic article by Anita L. Hummel from the blog A Bus on a Dusty Road. It's titled Survival and Celebration: The Secret History of Iconic Foods.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
And our mission for you today is to decode the DNA of human movement, political struggle, and just raw ingenuity hiding in your favorite meals. We're looking at your dinner table not just as a place to fuel up, but as a heavy, stained, incredibly accurate history book.
Because it really is the ultimate archive. I mean, while stone monuments crumble and paper treaties yellow and fade, recipes survive.
Yeah, they outlast empires.
Exactly. They survive by being whispered from grandparent to grandchild over a kitchen counter. But to read that archive, you have to understand that traditional cuisines weren't born out of someone just trying to be creative.
Right.
They are fundamentally shaped by the geographic reality of a region and the very harsh, often brutal limitations our ancestors faced.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because sitting here in a world of 24/7 grocery stores, it's so easy to view cooking as, well, a culinary art form.
Oh, for sure.
But before it was art, it was an urgent necessity. I really love the idea of looking at these iconic dishes as ancient, edible life insurance policies.
I think that's the perfect analogy. So let's start with the Korean Peninsula. Geographically, it is dominated by mountains and surrounded by seas.
Right.
And the winters there are bitterly cold and dry, which means agriculture just grinds to an absolute freezing halt for months.
Right. Centuries ago, before global supply chains could, fly in fresh produce in January, staring down a Korean winter must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
If you couldn't preserve the autumn harvest, you literally did not survive until spring.
Precisely. And their brilliant answer to that existential threat was the art of fermentation, specifically kimchi.
Oh, yeah.
In late autumn, they engaged in this massive communal tradition called gimjang. Entire villages would gather to process mountains of Napa cabbage, radishes, garlic, and chili peppers.
Wait, I know they bury kimchi, which always
Yeah.
sounded completely counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
Like burying cabbage in the dirt sounds like a recipe for compost, not food.
Yeah, it sounds weird to us now.
How does that not just instantly rot?
Well, it all comes down to controlling the microbial environment. They would salt the cabbage really heavily.
Okay.
Salt draws out the moisture via osmosis, which deprives rot-causing bacteria of the water they need to multiply. Then they packed it all into massive earthen jars called ongji.
Right, I've seen those big clay pots.
Exactly. And the genius part is the burial. By burying the jars underground, below the frost line, they utilized geothermal insulation.
So the ground acted like a natural refrigerator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ambient air temperature above ground would wildly fluctuate, dropping well below freezing. But underground, the dirt stays at a relatively constant, cool temperature.
Oh, wow.
And this specific environment is perfect for lactic acid bacteria. These good bacteria thrive in salty, oxygen-free environments. They consume the natural sugars in the vegetables and produce lactic acid.
And that acts as the preservative.
Yep. It drops the pH level so low that harmful pathogens simply cannot survive.
That is incredible. I mean, they essentially hacked the soil temperature to create a biological lifeline, providing vital vitamin C and gut-healing probiotics during months when everything above ground was dead.
What's fascinating here is the sociology behind that survival mechanism.
Yeah.
The communal labor of Jimjang taught generations of people a fundamental lesson.
Which is?
Survival was not an individual pursuit. If the village didn't work together to harvest, salt, and bury those jars, the village didn't eat. It wove social cohesion directly into their diet.
Man, that's powerful. And it wasn't just happening in the freezing cold either. You had a completely different climate challenge thousands of miles away in the hot, dry Mediterranean.
Oh, right. Italy.
Yeah, in Italy, they had a massive yield of durum wheat in the summer, but a really dense population that needed to eat all year round.
Right. Now, in the wealthy, damper northern parts of Italy, they traditionally made pasta fresca. Fresh pasta using soft wheat and eggs.
Which is delicious, but it goes bad quickly.
Exactly. In the South, in places like Campania, they pioneered an absolute engineering marvel to solve their food security issue. Pasta secca, dried pasta.
So how exactly did they make it last for years in a pantry? Like, what's the mechanism there?
It's all about moisture reduction. They used hard durum wheat semolina, mixed it just with water, and extruded it. Then they hung it up to dry in the specific coastal breezes of the region.
Coastal breezes.
Look,
Real.
yeah, those breezes provided the exact right level of humidity to dry the pasta slowly. Because if it dries too fast, the pasta just shatters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And if it dries too slow, mold sets in. So by dropping the moisture content down below 12%, they created an environment where bacteria and mold simply lacked the hydration required to grow.
Edible life insurance again. So who was actually relying on this dried pasta back in the day?
Primarily the poorest citizens. In Naples during the 17th and 18th centuries, the urban poor were known as the lazzaroni. For them, this dried pasta was the only thing standing between them and starvation.
Wow.
It was cheap, calorie-dense fuel that could be boiled and tossed with a little lard or, later on a basic tomato sauce.
We see these survival blueprints hiding in plain sight everywhere. Take the Caribbean, for example. I've always wondered about jerk seasoning.
Oh, yeah, jerk is a great example.
Like, I know it's incredibly flavorful, but I read that the Maroons, who were formerly enslaved people that escaped into the mountainous interior of Jamaica, they had to preserve wild boar meat without using smoke. Why couldn't they just smoke it?
Well, because of the colonial forces hunting them. A column of smoke from a fire is basically a giant signal in the sky giving away your hidden location.
Oh, right. Of course.
They needed a way to preserve meat in the sweltering tropical heat without alerting the British. So they turned to the profound chemical properties of local plants.
But how does rubbing spices on meat stop it from rotting in a jungle?
They used a heavy rub of allspice, Scotch bonnet peppers, and wild salt. The capsaicin in those incredibly hot peppers actually disrupts bacterial cell membranes.
Wait, really? It attacks the bacteria?
Yes. And allspice contains high levels of a compound called eugenol, which is a powerful natural antiseptic. They were literally utilizing advanced botanical warfare against bacteria to keep their food safe.
That completely changes how I will look at a plate of jerk chicken.
Ah.
And then you have the complete opposite environment with the Nordics and gravlax.
Gravlax.
I know it's a staple at brunch now, but how did medieval fishermen cure salmon by burying it in freezing sand?
Yeah.
That sounds wild.
It's a similar principle of controlling the environment. The name gravlax actually comes from the Scandinavian words for grave and salmon.
Grave salmon. That's intense.
Right. Fishermen would take salted salmon and bury it in the cold sand above the high tide line. The salt pulled the moisture out of the fish, while the freezing sand provided a cold, low-oxygen, constant temperature environment.
So it's basically the cold version of the kimchi burial.
Exactly. This allowed for a very slow, mild fermentation and curing process. It gave them a vital, preserved protein source long after the seas had frozen over and the boats were locked in ice.
So across the globe, the foundational layers of these cuisines were built purely on trying not to die. But once a community successfully engineers its survival, once you figure out how to preserve the cabbage or the salmon and keep hunger at bay, food transitions, doesn't it?
It really does.
It evolves from biological fuel into a spiritual and emotional language. Which brings us to how we celebrate.
Exactly. If survival is the foundation, celebration is the architecture that makes it beautiful. Once starvation isn't the immediate threat, we don't just eat to live. We use food to mark who we are.
Right.
Births, weddings, harvests, they are all anchored by highly ritualistic foods. And a key component of a celebration dish is that it is almost never fast. The labor is the point.
Yeah, you're taking hours, sometimes days, to prepare something. It's an offering of love shown through toil. You mentioned Mexican mole poblano as the ultimate example of this earlier.
Oh, a true ceremonial mole is staggering in its complexity. We are talking 30 to 40 ingredients.
That is just wild to me, 40 ingredients.
Yeah, you have various dried chilies, roasted nuts, seeds, charred tortillas, plantains, dark Mexican chocolate, warm spices, and historically all of that is ground down by hand on a volcanic stone called a metat.
But wait, why go through the grueling physical punishment of grinding 40 ingredients on a rock? I mean, why not just chop them and throw them in a pot?
Because of the physics of flavor release. When you grind ingredients on a coarse volcanic stone, you are crushing the cell walls and releasing volatile essential oils in a way that simply slicing with a knife doesn't achieve.
Oh, so it actually changes the chemistry of the sauce.
Exactly. It creates a deeply integrated paste. But it's exhausting physical work. You reserve this for monumental occasions, weddings, patron saint days. the Day of the Dead.
It's labor of love.
When a family serves mole, they are looking at their guests and communicating, "You are worth the hours of backbreaking toil this required."
You see that same multi-stage theatrical preparation in so many cultures, like an authentic Indian biryani where the meat and rice are partially cooked, layered intricately with saffron and spices, sealed with dough, and steamed slowly.
Yes.
Or Moroccan tagine simmering for hours.
Mm.
These dishes force the cooks to slow down, and they force the community to gather and share the moment.
They demand an understanding of fire, of layered spices, and most importantly, of patience.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. If a celebration is supposed to be about joy and abundance, why do so many ritual foods focus on hard times?
That's a great question.
Take the Jewish Passover Seder. It's this massive, beautiful family gathering, but the food on the table is intensely focused on trauma. You eat maror, bitter herbs, specifically to taste the bitterness of slavery.
Right.
You eat chereset, the sweet paste, to represent the literal mortar the enslaved Hebrews used to build monuments. And the matzah, the unleavened bread, reminds you that they had to flee so fast their bread couldn't even rise. Why put the bitterness of the past at the center of a joyful celebration?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's all about identity reinforcement. Celebration isn't just about smiling, it's about remembering who you are as a people.
Okay, that makes sense.
From a neurobiological standpoint, memory is deeply tied to sensory input. When you just read a history book, it's an abstract concept. But when a family sits down for a Passover Seder, that plate is an active, edible memory.
Edible memory, I love that phrase.
By physically chewing the bitter herbs, the sharp, harsh taste triggers a sensory response. The story of survival isn't just told. It is tasted, smelled, and felt. It becomes a living, physical sensation that cements the history into the minds of the next generation.
If eating these foods is how we remember who we are, what happens when you are forcibly ripped away from the land where those ingredients grow? What happens to that edible memory when war or economic collapse forces you to pack it into a suitcase?
That is one of the most profound challenges a culture can face. Food is often the very first thing displaced people cling to when trying to maintain their identity in a new world, and it's the absolute last thing they lose.
Right.
When diaspora communities migrate, they lose their landscapes. They might even lose their native language over a generation or two, but they carry their recipes in their heads.
But then they arrive in a new, unfamiliar place. The climate is wrong, the soil is completely different, and they can't find the ancestral ingredients.
And that is where culinary adaptation happens. It's this heartbreaking but beautiful tension between honoring your tradition and surviving your new environment.
So adapting a recipe in exile is almost like translating a beautiful poem into a new language.
Yeah.
You have to swap in local words, or in this case, local spices and proteins, but you're desperately trying to capture the exact same feeling of home.
That is a phenomenal way to put it. You can see this clearly with the creation of chicken tikka masala in the United Kingdom.
Oh, right, the national dish.
Exactly. South Asian chefs brought their profound understanding of layered spices in tandoor cooking, but they adapted those traditional flavor profiles to suit the British palate, which heavily favored meats served in a rich, comforting gravy. It was an act of translation.
Or look at the American South, specifically Louisiana with Cajun and Creole cuisine.
Yes, the perfect melting pot of survival and adaptation. You had enslaved West Africans, French colonizers, Spanish settlers, and Native Americans all colliding in this swampy, humid environment.
A total collision of cultures.
They brought their ancestral techniques, but they had to use what the local ecosystem provided.
So how did they manage to recreate those deep, complex flavors without their native crops?
Through sheer ingenuity. For example, when West Africans couldn't get the specific ingredients they used to thicken their traditional stews back home, they learned from local Native Americans to use powdered sassafras leaves known as filet powder.
Oh, wow.
They incorporated local crawfish and Gulf seafood in place of the proteins from their homelands. When you smell that specific dark roux cooking down or that unique spice blend, it forms an invisible boundary of safekeeping for that community. It tells the world, despite everything, we are still here.
But this raises an important question for us today. In our hyper-connected, fast-paced modern world, that deep connection seems to be under severe threat. Look at the rise of industrial agriculture and the fast food homogenization of our diets.
It is a massive threat. When we rely entirely on ultra-processed convenience foods, mass-produced by global corporations, we are losing much more than just nutritional density. We are erasing the archive.
Wait, how does eating a fast food burger erase the archive?
Because of what replaces the traditional food systems. When a traditional regional cheese goes extinct because mass market cheddar is cheaper, or when an heirloom variety of rice that has been cultivated for thousands of years is replaced by a patented, genetically modified monocrop, a piece of human heritage dies with it.
That's depressing, honestly.
It is. We lose the localized fermentation techniques that kept our ancestors alive. We lose the knowledge of how to work with that specific local soil's microbiome. Protecting traditional cooking isn't just about nostalgia for the good old days. It is an active, vital defense of our historical memory and our agricultural diversity.
Look at how we eat today. We treat dinner as a 15-minute transactional pit stop so we can just get back to scrolling on our screens or answering emails.
So true.
If the modern world of drive thrusts and digital distraction is threatening to erase all of this history, what is the antidote? How do we fight back?
Well, the solution is actually built into the very design of a dining table. We have to look at the power and the ancient human ritual of commensality.
Commensality. Break that down for us.
It comes from the Latin roots cum, meaning with, and mensa, meaning table. It literally means the act of eating together at the same table.
Oh,
Throughout human history, breaking bread with someone has been the ultimate sign of peace, trust, and community. Biologically, when we eat together, our brains actually release oxytocin. We mirror each other's gestures. You are literally sharing your life force with the people across from you.
and in so many traditional cultures, eating is never just a solitary act of fueling up while staring at a television. The mechanics of the meal actually force you to interact.
Absolutely. Take the Ethiopian tradition of gursha. The meal revolves around injera, an incredible spongy sourdough flatbread served on a massive communal platter and topped with various rich stews.
It's so good.
But the mechanics of the meal involve a beautiful social contract. You take a perfectly rolled morsel of the injera and stew, and you place it directly into the mouth of a friend or family member at the table.
You physically feed the other person with your own hands.
Yes. It is an explicit, vulnerable gesture of deep affection, respect, and social bonding. It connects you to the other person in a profoundly intimate way that simply handing them a plate just does not.
That is beautiful. And you see different versions of this communal anchor in other cultures too, like the Italian Sunday sauce.
Yes, exactly.
That meal isn't just about the food. It's an hours-long ritual that paces the entire day. You start the sauce bubbling on the stove first thing in the morning. The whole house fills with the smell of garlic and slow-braised meat.
And by the time the family actually gathers to eat in the afternoon, that table serves as the anchor for the entire week.
Right. It's the designated space to argue, to laugh, to pass down family gossip.
It reaffirms the family ties week after week. You see a similar structured mindfulness as a traditional Vietnamese family meal, too.
How does that work?
It centers around a shared bowl of rice, a communal clear broth called khan, and savory side dishes placed in the middle. To eat properly in that setting requires you to show active consideration for others.
Meaning you can't just serve yourself whatever you want.
Right. You have to navigate the shared space gracefully. You dip mindfully. You adhere to a subtle social hierarchy, like making sure to offer the best, most tender pieces of fish to the elders first. You participate in the collective rhythm of the family.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I think it proves that the table is one of the last truly sacred spaces we have left. It forces us to put down the phones and actually be present, embodied humans interacting with the people right in front of us.
Exactly. These rituals remind us that eating together is a declaration. It is a bold statement that living isn't just about surviving your day or crossing tasks off a to-do list or maximizing your productivity. Living is about joy. It's about flavor, texture, and real, tangible human connection.
That brings us to our final takeaway for you today. We want to challenge you to go into your kitchen and look at your pantry with a completely different perspective. The next time you see a box of dried pasta, don't just see a quick, lazy dinner. See a brilliant, highly engineered solution to grain security that kept generations of Neapolitans alive.
Exactly.
When you look at the spices on your shelf, the allspice, the cinnamon, the chili powder, see them as botanical map markers tracking ancient trade routes, cultural collisions, and desperate human survival. Every single bite of traditional food is an unbroken thread connecting you to your ancestors and to your neighbors.
And I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over today. If your own family's history, with all of its unique struggles, its geographical migrations, and its quiet triumphs over the last century, were distilled into a brand new single recipe today, what would those ingredients be? And how many hours of labor would it take to prepare it?
Oh, I love that. What a fantastic question to end on. If you love this deep dive into the hidden architecture of our food, we want to invite you to join our community. Please subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our A Bus on a Dusty Road YouTube channel, and sign up for our newsletter to keep up to date with all our future deep dives. We have so much more to explore together, so until next time, remember that the history of humanity isn't just locked away in a museum. It's sitting right there on your plate, waiting to be tasted.